Yes, citrus is fire. I don't care what anyone says. Okay. I'm gonna preface this video by saying I know this is an unpopular opinion, all right? I can already imagine some of the comments below in this video telling me that I have some kind of problems for advocating for such a bizarre thing. But it's really not that bizarre if you think about it. Yes, we should stop wearing shoes. Now, let's get the negative points about barefoot culture out of the way before I continue. It's dirty, all right? Especially if you live in a city or in a more densely populated area. You know, your feet are gonna get fucking dirty, okay? This should apply more to people that live in more rural or more beach areas, somewhere where you can mostly walk on grass or on sand or some sort of natural setting. You know, I don't expect people to want to walk around barefoot in the city or in a suburb or anywhere where there's mostly pavement and dirty streets and such, because that's kind of nasty. I will concede that point. Not wearing shoes doesn't protect you from bacteria or maybe glass or anything that could damage your feet. I totally get it, okay? But if you do happen to have the luxury of living in a, place where it's relatively clean and there's a lot of access to grass and nature trails, things like that, I absolutely do think you should try to walk around barefoot in those kind of environments as much as possible. There are cultures around the world that do such a thing. And I don't just mean tribal cultures or types of people or places that don't have a lot of technology. I'm talking, Australia and New Zealand. There's a lot of people in those countries that adhere to barefoot culture. It's a historical reason. I'm pretty sure it's because of their ancestors or because of their, maybe some kind of First Nations, indigenous tribes might have normalized that sort of thing. I'm not exactly sure of the history behind it, but I do know for sure that it's totally normal to just see people not wearing shoes in New Zealand and Australia, going to the supermarket, just taking a walk in the park. Parents, when they bring their children to the park, they don't give them shoes to wear. They just play outside and don't have shoes on. You don't wear your shoes inside, your home or in your yard. It's just generally more seen as a normal thing to do in these places. I did some research, as in did research. I asked ChatGPT, but anyway, that's basically what doing research is these days. That's a whole other topic. But I did ask the AI, and it told me that it's not just Australia and New Zealand. Thailand, certain places there, a lot of people don't wear shoes. India as well, there are certain regions where it's normal just to be barefoot, especially when going to temple and things like that. Mostly nature settings, like I said before. So yes, I don't think this is a completely controversial take. There's a lot of people in the world that already adhere to this kind of culture and this kind of idea. And it's more in the West, especially North America, where it is more uncommon to see people being barefoot in public. And I just think we should normalize this. Maybe not 100%, but, more normalized than it currently is. Being barefoot has a lot of benefits, strengthening the strength of your feet, your balance, posture, also just being more in touch with nature, especially if you're walking around in, like I said earlier, parks or nature trails, things like that. You really get a better connection with the earth and with the environment around you by feeling the ground, every step of the way, instead of having a cushioning in between there. Same thing with when you're a child and you're growing up and you're building muscle and you're growing into your adult body. Most people have a lot of issues with their feet as they get older, bunions and things like that, podiatry issues. And a lot of those issues could just not develop at all if you grew up just not wearing shoes, because you're strengthening your foot muscles and you're just you know, getting your feet more used to the you know, walking directly onto the ground. When you wear shoes all the time, your feet are growing and molding into the shape of the shoes every day, because that's, you know, it's like a, you know, it's like a box that you put your foot in, right? But you're not building those natural muscles and that natural feeling that with the ground that your foot is supposed to have naturally. You know, you get your foot used to the sensation of being in a shoe, not of being on the ground directly. So that leads to a lot of weak feet and a lot of, you know, I think it's, I don't remember the word exactly, but foot issues later on. Now, again, do I think everyone should always be walking around barefoot? No, especially like I said earlier, if you're in an urban setting. But, you know, in a store, especially in the summer, like right now, I'm wearing shoes. It is, you know, -5 where I live right now, degrees Celsius, which is cold. Okay, even if you don't know the metric system, anything below 0 is below freezing point. So you should know it's cold, right? Obviously, if you're in a very northern place, in a cold area, or in a very hot area, the opposite issue, like in Arizona or one of these places where it's like, you know, fucking 30+ degrees Celsius every day, you know, probably not a good idea to just have the skin of your feet directly touching the ground. You know, that might hurt. Same with the cold. You don't want to, you know, you got to protect your feet from the elements, but that just applies to any clothing, right? But if you have the opportunity to be in a decent climate and not wear shoes as much as possible, I think that would be a good thing for most people to do, and I think that should just be a cultural thing that we should normalize overall. Like I said, you know, going into stores, shopping malls, you know, certain places like that where, yeah, of course, it's not really clean, but like I said, in Australia and New Zealand, they already do this. It's just totally normal to see people walking around shopping without shoes on, and I don't know why that's considered such a hot take in other places, because there are so many benefits. The benefits outweigh the negatives in terms of just normalizing barefoot culture. And, you know, last summer, I did my part, you know, not all the time, not every day, but I would try my best if I knew I was going to be walking around in certain cleaner or natural areas to, you know, take my shoes off. And yeah, it's not really perceived well. People think you're gross and people think you're weird, but, you know, if you're afraid of tracking dirt inside the house, for example, you could just wear socks in the house until you take a shower and clean your feet. You know, there's a lot of people that say, oh, I wouldn't go into my bed directly with my outside clothes. Okay, so you know, you take a shower before you get into bed or whatever if you don't want to track dirt. There's, you know, we live in the 21st century. There are plenty of ways to stay clean and to stay healthy without necessarily having to cover your cover your feet all the time. And that's it. I'm going to try this summer to see if I can be as much barefoot as I can as possible. I know that in, you know, stores and things like that, there are sometimes, you know, people that don't want you to be barefoot, you know, like the sign, no shoes, no shirt, no service. I get it, okay? If you own a store, and you want people to wear shoes inside your store, that's totally fine. I totally get it. But, you know, I just want to normalize this idea of being barefoot in public. I don't think it should be seen as such a weird thing, or such a weird thing, and such a thing that people look at as weird or disgusting. I just think it, you know, it should be normal. People are fine with wearing sandals and no socks on in public. You know, I take the metro and people are in the summer wearing just sandals, and I'm like, you're basically one step away from being barefoot. So, you know, why not just go all the way at that point? I don't know. I don't know. I just think if you never thought about this concept, maybe just look into the benefits of being barefoot and, you know, research some cultures that generally do walk around barefoot a lot, and you'll see that what I'm saying isn't that controversial. And that's basically what I have to say on that topic. I think we should normalize barefoot culture, and I'm going to do my part wherever and whenever I can this year, especially this summer, and I think you should too.